poprosím teď Tomase Meldgaarda, kurátora Dělnického muzea v Kodani, o jeho prezentaci. Máte slovo.
Thank you. And thank you very much for having me in this interesting context. It's been really interesting to hear the presentations, and I'll try to do mine now. I apologize for not having been able to finish it in time, so it will not be bilingual. I hope that you can manage. It has been sent to you, so you can send it out to the participants afterwards, so that you can read it. What I'm going to do to talk about is a little about the history of the Workers' Museum in Copenhagen, and then I would like to just present a few examples of the exhibitions that we have made that I think illustrates the way we are heading in terms of how we would like to work with workers' history and how we would like to be a museum in a modern society. So I'll try to share my screen now. Yes, there it is. And there is. I hope you can all see it now. So the picture here at the beginning is also the only picture that I have in the presentation. I hope it is not getting too dull after all. What you see here is just one side of the assembly hall that is the place where the Workers' Museum is in Copenhagen is established. So the museum was established in 1981. And from the very beginning, the trade unions and also the National Association of Trade Unions were interested and supported the establishment of the museum. So we had economical support, and we still have some economical support from the National Association of Unions. And the purpose of the museum was from the beginning to preserve the history of the workers' movement, to make exhibitions about and research into the history of the working class, the labor movement, and the trade unions. One of the main assets of the museum is that it was established in the oldest workers' assembly hall in Denmark, which was built in 1879, and it's actually also the second oldest one in the world, the oldest one being in Australia. And this is important because this was the first building where the workers had a place to meet, a place to have social activities. So it played an important role in the development of the socialist movement in Denmark. The Social Democratic Party had one of its first offices in the building. There was a library established for the workers so that they could further and strengthen their political and cultural education. So you can say that this building embodies the history that the museum is committed to deal with. One of the, I'll just go back once because I would like to say also that this building was also the headquarters for a lot of trade unions who had their offices there, and the last trade union didn't move out of the building until after the museum was established. So one of the reasons why this building was a possible place for the Workers' Museum was that it didn't have any use anymore. It was just empty, and the economy was not very good. When in the 70s and 80s, all the trade unions needed better buildings and better places for their activities, so they didn't want to hire any space in this building anymore. So the vision and the mission of the Workers' Museum could be written like this, that our vision is to strengthen the will for an equal and just society by creating engaging sessions with history. And that means that what we want to do is to engage our audience, our visitors, in a debate about society today, and we want to do that in a historical context. You know, like we like to tell our audience about the history of the working class, and then put some questions to them about what is it like today? Have it changed? Is it better? Are there other problems today? And the mission of the Workers' Museum is to collect and preserve, explore, communicate, and update the cultural heritage of the workers' movement and the history of working conditions and everyday life in Denmark. And this, I think, especially the last part, everyday life in Denmark, is comparatively important because it's very evident when you go to the Workers' Museum in Copenhagen that it's a lot about everyday life. We have a lot of apartments. You can see what it was like to live in the 30s, in 1950s. Even we have an apartment that should go back to 1920. So you could argue that our museum is very much the museum about the lower middle class and how their living conditions. And one of the things that we do today is that we try to put a more focus on what is happening on the labor market, how is this developing, and how is people's life changed because of the conditions on the labor market today. So just a bit about the worker history in Denmark, because as I told you, the Workers' Museum wasn't established until 1981, which is, I think, relatively late. At that time, there had already been some initiatives among the public to establish a museum, and it was established because the trade union got interested and decided to support it economically. But actually, there was a labor movements library and archives that was established in 1909. So that means that from very early on, the labor movement in Denmark decided that they had to have their own institution to collect and preserve their own history. So the idea of this library and archive was to document the development and growing success of the labor movement. Also the Social Democratic Party, and give the workers access to literature for their cultural education. So over the years, this institution has developed a unique collection of archives from leaders and politicians from the movement, and also from the trade unions and from left-wing parties. We have a very large collection of posters from elections. We have a large collection of newspapers and banners and so on. And actually, they also had a small collection of objects that came in when trade unions gave their archives to the institution. Sometimes there were banners or there were bills that were used during meetings, or cups or things like that. And they collected, or they decided to collect some of these things, and they called it their own small museum. And maybe I should say this is also a library. That means that this institution collects literature about the labor movement in Denmark, and it also has literature that was meant for the worker to educate themselves, to get a better knowledge about the situation, about the labor movement, and so on. And this institution also published a periodical on labor history. In 2004, the Workers' Museum and the Labor Movements Library and Archives were unified. So today we are one institution. So when we say the Workers' Museum, it's actually a museum, a library, and archives. It's quite important because the collection of the library and archives are very important also when we do exhibitions, for example. And we try to look at our collection as one big collection, not archives, library, and a museum, but as you know, a big collection that just different types of different kinds of material. So the development of museum collection, of course, as I told you before, the labor movements library and archives had a collection of banners and bells and cups, and they even had a memorial room for the first social democratic prime minister in Denmark, Thorvald Stauning. And these things were over time given to the museum, so that became part of the museum's collection. But apart from that, the museum had to start from scratch collecting. So at the beginning, almost everything that people offered the museum was accepted into the collection. And we have a lot of things that just doesn't have enough or sufficient information about the history and the use, so that we can use it in our work. And I think that is probably also one of the reasons why it is, you can say this is very much a museum of the daily life, because tools and kitchen utensils, plates and cutlery, furniture and private clothing were collected in large quantities, because that was what people offered the museum, so that was what we got. And we also asked for objects from the 50s, because one of the first things that the museum decided to do was to make exhibition about what life was like in the 1950s, which was a period where the welfare state in Denmark was still developing, but was developing quickly, and the Social Democratic Party were ruling in Denmark and had this idea that they wanted to make a secure society for everyone. So the ways of collection, we all know how you collect passively, that people contact the museum to offer their things, and this is also one of the ways that our collection has developed. We also have made larger collection projects in cooperation with other museums. For example, when a prominent middle-class department store in Denmark closed, or here in Copenhagen closed in 1993, we collected some things from that. And when the B&W shipyards were shut down in 1996, we also collected from that. So we try sometimes to be aware of what is happening around us. And these two are just examples of some of the businesses and institutions where we decided this is so important for us to document, because this department store was an important center where the lower middle class and the middle class bought a lot of the stuff. And of course, the shipyards was a workplace for the classical working class. Today, of course, we collect more restrictively and only accept things that have sufficient quality and historical value. We actively collect stories, documents, photos, and objects from the development of the labor markets, and this is something that we have growing focus on the labor market and how it develops. And so we actually try actively to go out and ask for stories and objects that illustrates what is happening at the moment. Actually, I've just for a couple of weeks ago collected some objects from the Volt, this distribution company, which we have some problems with here in Denmark, because it operates in a totally different way, and it's very different it's very difficult for the trade unions to find a way to organize the workers that work for these kinds of companies. And then we collect personal reports and photos documenting the here and now conflicts on the labor markets. And these types of material constitutes a growing part of the collected or the material that we have in our collection. So I just want to give an example of how we can also make collections. In 2013, the teachers in Denmark were locked out, or they had a lockout because they couldn't agree with their employer about the working conditions. So for 25 days, they couldn't go to work. And during this period, they demonstrated in the streets to get back to work. And they were very creative. So there were a lot of things going on. So we decided that we wanted to collect from this. And then we organized collection events or collection evenings where we invited the teachers to come and offer some of the things that they have produced during their demonstrations. And we also organized talks and debates about the history of the collective bargaining system in Denmark. And we asked the teachers to tell their own stories. So we actually had quite a huge or big collection there. And that was a way of reaching out to the community and to make them interested in the museum and show them that we are also interested in you, and we are interested in what you are experiencing now, and we want to document that. So what we have in the recent years is a growing focus on making exhibitions that puts current problems on debates and draws historical lines from past to present. And the audience is also invited to take an active part by exploring their own reactions and attitudes toward the subject matter in the exhibition. Sometimes we build workshops into the exhibition. That means a special room where we invite people to take part in the activities, or we invite people to come and make speeches in the exhibition about certain objects or certain subjects. We can have a room where we invite people or NGOs to make short-term curations or exhibitions during exhibition periods that can play a role as comments on the bigger exhibition context. And then collecting selected objects may also be part of the exhibition project. So here just a couple of examples of some of the exhibitions that we have made in recent years. Young Voices in the Herd of in 2015. It was an exhibition about democracy and young people, because surveys revealed that the Danish youth is among those in the EU that has the highest knowledge about democracy, but they didn't trust themselves in the political debate. And as part of the development of the exhibition, we contacted pupils in the schools and asked them about their conception of democracy. And we also asked them to offer us objects and tell the stories about this object. How this object, or find an object that to them was a symbol of democracy, and then tell the story from that object. As part of the exhibition, we made a timeline to demonstrate how the election age had developed over time. And then the audience was asked about the attitude to granting the right to vote at the age of 16, where it is 18 years today. And that was a way of telling the story about how this is developed. That 18 years is just, it wasn't always there. It was started at a certain age, and then and then it has developed over time. And then asking if today would you find it meaningful to grant the right to vote already at the age of 16? So it was a way to bring a historical question into a modern context. Then in 2019, we had an exhibition called Stop Slavery. This was a centenary for the selling of the Danish Virgin Islands to the United States of America. And we decided to make an exhibition about how slavery developed in the context of the Virgin Islands, and about the culture of the slaves and their resistance on the islands. And this exhibition was put into the context of human rights. That means that the introduction room was based on the UN Charter and had a lot of photos of people from all around the world. And then the exhibition took the people through the history of how slavery started, how the slaves came to the Virgin Islands and how they lived there. And then, of course, a story about the Denmark selling these islands. In the last room, artists and NGOs commented on and informed about slavery in a modern context. Because one of the things that we found out is that more people are living under slave-like conditions today than during the heyday of slavery in the 18th and 19th centuries. And that is quite interesting because we always celebrate that we don't have slavery anymore and it's not allowed to keep slaves, and then we have economical systems that make it possible somehow to keep people in or suppress people in other ways that may not be classical or slavery in the classical meaning of the word, but has the same impact on people. And in this exhibition, we also collected some objects from some of these NGOs. So just to sum up, this is just a phrase that should not be taken too literally, but if we say we read more newspapers than history books, it means that we are very much concerned about what is going on today. So it's very important for us to find out what is happening now, and then to find out what the historical circumstances is. Why have we come to the place that, or how have we ended where we are today, and how can we get on? So we conceive our focus on equality, democracy, and the freedom of speech as an integrated part of our obligation to convey the history of the labor movement. From our perspective, the modern welfare state is a result of the social democratic movement embracing democracy and reforming society from within instead of revolutionizing it. I think this we really see the way the labor movement and also the left-wing parties developed in Denmark has meant a lot for the way that the Danish welfare state and also Danish democracy developed. And by telling about the past, we can strengthen the awareness of society as a historically conditioned society and raise the question about where we find the same kind of inequality, lack of influence, or poor living conditions in today's societies. So do we still have some of the same problems today that the industrial worker fought against in the past? That is, of course, is a huge question. But what we are looking for is that we still have definitely problems on the labor market, and we have to face them and find out how to deal with them. And the labor movement has to find out how to do the deal with these new kinds of companies that are working in many across borders in many different countries, and they are digitized and they have digital platforms and all this that makes it very difficult to control them in the same way as we do traditional work in traditional industries and workplaces. So I think that was all from me. Thank you.
Já také děkuji Tomasi Meldgaardovi a zeptám se, jestli někdo chce položit otázku. Nevím, jestli Jürgen Schmidt se chce zeptat. Je to tak? Je to tak. Máte slovo. Ne, nechce. Byl to potlesk naopak jenom. Tak já dám chvíli na přihlášení.
I just have to find out how to stop sharing. Yeah.
Pokud se nikdo nehlásí, tak já se možná Tomase Meldgaarda jenom zeptám na jednu věc a To je na otázku zastoupení politických stran přímo v té expozici. To znamená, jakou roli v vaší expozici by měly politické strany a možná jak je ta role zachycována. Nemyslím si, že tam máte nějaké klasické stranické dějiny. Tento člověk byl předseda od tehdy do tehdy a tak dále. Asi více jde o ten proces. No. Tak jak to je? Má otázka a pak slovo do Manchesteru.
Yeah, no, we don't have any. We don't represent the political parties' histories. We only do it when there's something to celebrate. That means today, for example, or this year, it is 150 years since the Social Democratic Party in Denmark was established. So we have celebrated that with an exhibition of posters that shows the development of the Social Democratic Party. And then when the Communist Party had its centenary in 2019, we also had a poster exhibition about that. But that was all.
Děkuju moc. Alice Pars, slovo.
Yeah, thank you. That was really interesting. I was just wondering about, you spoke about kind of contemporary or active collecting, and when you invite people in to, you spoke about the strike and you invited people in to bring things and then you might collect them. How do you go about choosing, or not even choosing, but communicating what you don't want to collect? Because we get also a lot of people contacting us to collect things and wanting to make sure people don't feel that we don't value some objects, but obviously you can't collect everything. So I'm just wondering how that worked out for you. Was it you maintained good relationships with people even if you didn't want to collect everything?
Oh, but that's a very good question, and I think I don't know if we have found out how to do it, because for example, we have a not a problem, but we have the issue with banners, for example, because we also have a very big collection of banners, and about 1,200. Not as big as yours, but still for Danish, for Denmark, it's a big collection, and we just have to realize that we cannot keep all the banners, and they were given to actually to the library and archives before, and then they came to the museum afterwards. So we can't always find out who gave them to the museum or who gave them originally. And we just and sometimes we just have to say, well, this banner is a bad condition, or we cannot keep it any longer. It's not interesting. We have enough. But we still keep them because we don't dare to discard them, because we fear that someday someone will come and say, well, we gave up our banners some years ago and we'd like to see them again, or we would like to borrow them or something like that. I think with banners now, when we are offered banners today, it's possible for us to say no without people getting hurt. Because they do understand that we have a lot, and they do understand a lot of them do not have are not in a condition that is good enough for us to preserve them. So that is just a small corner of it. But I think it's difficult to have a strategy for this. Actually, I think you just have to work with the way you communicate with people. Mm-hmm. You have to show them that you care very much about what they give you or what they want to give you, but it's not always that we can help them.
Thank you. Yeah, we're in the same position.
Tak děkuji moc. Nyní dostane slovo Jakub Jareš, poté Jürgen Schmidt a pak půjdeme k poslednímu příspěvku k jednotlivému muzeu, expozici. Jareš má slovo.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and especially for presenting these programs for people, for teachers in strike. It was really interesting for me because it tackles some problems I'm dealing with as well. I'm in the newly founded museum in post-industrial city Ostrava, and my main concern is how to make a museum for the people who are living there, who are the former workers, and not to do museum from some intellectual academic perspective. And that's my question. If you have any way how to include the voices of workers, of actually the people who is the museum aiming to address. So how systematically include their voices into the program of the museums or in the boards of the museums or whatever. Yeah. Thank you.
It's a very good question, and it's very difficult to do. But I think what we do now is that we are always going out into the streets when there are demonstrations or things are happening. We always go out and talk to people on the streets where it is happening. We take pictures. We interview people. We ask them whether or not they have objects that would be interesting to collect, and then we try to organize events in our assembly hall that could be interesting to them, for them to take part in. And I think, do I have an example of that? I can say a couple of times we have organized these collection events. And I think that is probably one of the ways you can reach out and make it more interesting, not only, as you say, for intellectuals, but also for people, normal people who just want to tell the story and may not be interested in very intellectual debates and things like that. I don't know. That was not a good answer, but I think that's probably one of the ways to do it. I think it's very important to get out to. As a workers' museums, of course, the trade unions are important for us. So we have a lot of contacts in the trade unions. We can always contact a trade union and ask them, do you know someone who are interested in this or that, or have special knowledge of this and that, and then get into contact with them and engage them in the work that we are doing. And I know we also, the archives often use or ask for people from the trade unions to come and help them to sort the archives and help them organize them so that they can get on the shelves and we can be able to find the material again.
Děkuju moc. Nevím, jestli Jakub Jariš chce něco doplnit. Nechce. Děkuji za to a dávám slovo Jürgenu Schmidtovi.
Yeah, Thomas, thanks for your presentation. In your presentation, you mentioned that you invite, I don't know exactly the formulation, that you invite your visitors to take an active part by exploring their own reactions.
Yeah.
How have I to imagine this in concrete? And the second part, which is not part of our discussion today, but I wanted just to mention it. I worked for several years in a global labor history project at Humboldt University. And there we also, of course, dealt a lot with slavery. And there we decided to be very careful by saying that we today have even more slavery than in the heydays of slavery, because there are still very different definitions of slavery. Yeah. But as I said, this is not topic of today. But I think I wanted to mention it.
But that's an important point, and I think I agree. Of course, there's a difference. So how do we engage people, audience? There are many ways to do that. Sometimes we have talks in the exhibition. We had an exhibition about craftsmen and the education of craftsmen, because we have a lack of people who are educated as craftsmen in Denmark. So we have an exhibition about that. And then we invited them to come into the exhibition and show the pieces that they did for the examination, to talk about that. And then the audience could come and ask questions and have discussion with them. what is it like to be educated as a craftsman, and also to admire these fantastic pieces that they produce for the examination. Another way is that we have stickers. Sometimes we have stickers with different questions that are asked to the public, and then we ask them to put the stickers in the exhibition where they think that they have seen something that is fantastic or not fantastic, or the stickers can be a comment to certain parts of the exhibition, and they can put them up where they want, and we can afterwards see where is the main interest, or where was the main interest of the audience, or what did they think about the exhibition, what did they think about certain parts of the exhibition. And that could be another way to engage people or audience in the exhibitions. And then the classical way, of course, is to have activities. For example, when we had the exhibition about the craftsmen and the craftsmen's education, we had an installation where three people had to stand in three corners, and they had to pull a hammer. And if they were able to cooperate precisely enough, they would be able to hit a nail with that hammer. But of course, that's very difficult because they have to lower the hammer in the same speed and at the same time and all this. So they rarely nail the hammer, or they rarely hit the nail. But that was a way to make an activity that at the same time demonstrated the need for cooperation.